In Evil Dead, you achieved a lot of camera movement in that kind of rugged terrain. You could talk a little bit about that.
Well, the fact that we shot the thing in 16 millimeter gave us an incredible amount of movement. Rob's saying I shouldn't mention 16 millimeter. Why?
But say that it was 16 millimeter film blown up to 35.
Well, it's still, you don't want to hear 16 millimeter.
Well, it was. It's obvious that it's a 16 blow up. I know.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But not to someone going in to the movie.
The
I think with 16 millimeter sounds fine.
okay, okay.
I might say it was blown up. I'm going to ask you about that later anyway.
I'm gonna say. How about if I say, because of the lightweight equipment, we had down there, it enabled us to move the camera around a great deal with very little difficulty, and Tim mounted the camera on this board, what we call a shaky cam, and we had different versions of it. One was about this big, and with it the cameraman can run very fast and the camera's in the middle, and it absorbs a great deal of the shocks as opposed to holding the camera like this, where it's a little more difficult to keep smooth. Also, we had a longer version of this thing. This is for the shots of this creature that is rushing through the woods. It lies sleeping until these college students disturb it. And to get the effect of it roaming the woods, we used this thing, the shaky cam. The other version of it was about a board 15 feet long. We had two men, one on each side, camera in the middle, and it would act like the middle of a, it was the axis point. So they could move as much as they wanted, but this point in the middle would move very little. And with these different devices, we were able to move the camera around in strange and hopefully new-looking ways.
The special effects in the movie are quite elaborate. Who designed them and
well, we had really two different effects men. They were broken up into categories of makeup effects, and that was Tom Sullivan, and then optical special effects, which is Bart Pierce. Tom did all the things with taking molds of the actors' faces, putting on the actual makeup, creating the masks, and building the creatures when we would have dummy shots. And Bart took care of the mats and worked with the stop-motion animation. And all through the final meltdown sequence, Bart and Tim and Tom Sullivan worked together for 9 weeks, just shooting stop-motion animation with the use of mats and split-frame animation, and it was just a very intense effects experience. What was the question? I got to answer shorter. I'm just getting blown away.
Is Robin distracting you, sitting right there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Maybe you can stay behind the camera.
Would you?
After raising the money for the film, shooting the picture, then you came to New York for post-production.
Yeah.
What did you find when you were going around looking at some of the post-production facilities, how you were treated, obviously a young filmmaker coming in with a low-budget picture?
Treated with a great deal of curiosity and friendliness, really, because at that time we were shopping around for the best editor, the best place to do the mix, the best place to rent rooms. So people treated us in a very straightforward and businesslike way. I think they realized that we were serious, so age didn't really become a factor at that point. Actually, it was not difficult. The fact that I was very young, did not put a hindrance on any of the production, I felt.
The sound effects track on the film is elaborate, to say the least. Who was responsible for that?
A fine sound editor by the name of Joe Macefield, and he did all our sound cutting. He came up with the most incredible sound effects, from Kandarian plotzing to pigs being slaughtered. It was incredible, really, the amount of effects that he could come up with. And we had long discussions during spotting sessions about the type of sound and the effect we wanted to achieve and how to harmonize these creatures' voices to make them sound unearthly, along with our mixer, Mel Zelnicker, who is really very talented. He's worked on an incredible number of Hollywood pictures. And in
Such films as?
Mel Zelnicker has worked on such films as Reds, Ragtime, boy, more than I can mention, but he's got a slew of experience behind him. Joe cut the sound here in New York in an editing room, 1600 Broadway, and that was a nice experience because I got to meet Brian De Palma for the first time, who I greatly admire, and in fact, I played him in video games. I hate to say this, and I really beat him kind of bad, twice. But he was very nice to me too, because I think he knew how hard it was to make a picture. So he understood.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to give a brief synopsis of the story
Okay.
the film is about.
Evil Dead is a film about 5 college students that go up to this small cabin in the mountains of Tennessee. And there they find an ancient book and a tape recording of a man, both left there by this man, a professor, who had gone to this cabin to study these artifacts on this dig that he had been on in what would have been ancient Samaria. And the tape recording that they find is a journal on exactly what this book is. And in fact, it's the Book of the Dead, a book of do's and don'ts dealing with the deceased. It's got burial passages of the Sumerians and ancient incantations for resurrecting the dead. And he warns on this tape that these things shouldn't be tampered with. But in his quest for knowledge, he goes ahead anyways. And he unleashes these evil forces. And in fact, they're still there as these children are one by one terrorized by it. It comes from the woods, this dark and brooding entity, and surrounds the cabin that they're in, and one by one it possesses them and their eyes go white, and they're jerked about like marionettes, and they're forced against one another. And it's a love story. No, it's not a love story, but it's a lot of fun. I don't want to give away the shock ending, but we tried to make it as scary and as fun as possible.
A lot of horror films are criticized for their assault on women, their have sex and die motifs. Evil Dead is not like that. In Evil Dead, everyone gets it.
Right. That's true. Everyone does get it. In fact, in Evil Dead, we tried to make tried to elevate the role of women in films so that they wouldn't totally be stereotyped as the victims. And I look at it as a blow for women's liberation in horror, in the sense that they became the monsters in this picture and they terrorized the men.